All righty. Hello, Facebook friends. Hi, everyone joining us here live. My name is Marina Manuelejo, and I'm the current EIR, which stands for Entrepreneur in Residence at the New Haven Free Public Library. And so this whole week, we've been inviting amazing, talented entrepreneurs like Barb to come chat with us for 30 minutes about their experience with previous failures, right? Like we don't, I think, necessarily create enough space to talk about the non-successful times of our business. So Barb is ending our week off, and I'm really excited to have her. So Barb, if you want to introduce yourself, and then I'll have Colleen introduce herself right after.
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I am the founder and CEO of Higher Power Coaching and Consulting, LLC. And for those of you in New Haven, I'm also the community manager of Known Co-working, which has the physical space at 139 Orange Street, but we have lots of stuff online at knowncoworking.com. And I'll leave more stuff for when we get into the conversation.
Ooh, sorry.
What are you sorry about?
That was mine. I was trying to get us on Facebook Live, and then it started replaying on Facebook Live what we had already said. So my bad to everyone in the universe.
Oh, no, okay. Don't hear anything. Colleen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm clearly the technical manager today. I'm Colleen. I work for the library. I work at the Exchange and I've Squared as the business sort of facilitator. I work with Marina, and we do a lot of entrepreneurship-based programs for nonprofits and businesses together. And we're excited. This is our last installation of this month's program, and we've seen such good speakers this week, and I'm excited to continue this today.
Yeah, we've had really lovely conversations. And I'm particularly excited for you, Barb, because if anyone out of all the people that I know, Barb knows how to flip something and just make it positive. And so I'm really interested in how you've been able to dip and dodge inevitable failures that come with starting your own business, starting your own consulting, movement. So my first question to you, Barb, which is kind of going off the beaten track, is, were you always like this, right? And maybe talk about how you've built your mindset over the years to be so resilient.
Yeah, so I cannot talk about anything about my business or me and how I've become resilient without first talking about the fact that I'm in 2 12-step recovery programs. So I've always been an optimist. I've always been a glass half full. In fact, I know somebody who was such a pessimist. He said, the glass is broken. And I go, yeah, I know a glass blower. Like, that is how much of an optimist I am.
I love it.
That being said, before recovery, I kind of felt like I was a fragmented person. I was like these pieces floating around in the universe with all these spaces in between them, and like other people's stuff could creep in there. And the process of 12-step recovery has integrated me into one whole person. So I have integrity. And actually it took me until like a year ago to realize integrity and integration are like parts of the same word. And so what would happen in the past is, if something happened to me, like I could get flicked by something and I could easily be shattered by it because I was fragmented, but I'm whole now. So I can be rocked by things that happen to me, but not shattered by them the way that I used to. And for this reason, I have started a podcast that's called Fragmented to Whole: Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery, because it's an apt description of my experience. And what I do in the podcast, they're usually 10 to 20 minutes, more like 15. And they're just things that I learned, because I was a seeker. I was a self-help junkie. I was in therapy from about 15 until a couple years ago, and I'm 57. And of course I stopped from time to time, and I did workshops, workbooks, I mean, you name it, to try to like get better, be better, do more. And I got little improvements here and there, but like nothing affected me deeply the way that recovery did. And so one of the things I love about being an entrepreneur is that there is so much in the entrepreneurial mindset that is the same as the mindset in recovery, which
Mm,
is not only is failure an option, it's a requirement.
Wow.
And what I call getting good at failure, what I mean is that you bounce back and you understand it is just part of life. It's not about you personally. It is not happening to you. It is a thing that happens. And if you have the idea in your life that you're not going to fail, that you're not going to fall down, then you're going to suffer. But
Mm,
if you look at your failures and your foibles and your screw ups as just part of the package of life, then it's okay. And I will say another thing about recovery is that like a lot of what was going on for me was subconscious. Even though I'm a very introspective person, there was a lot going on I didn't know. And subconsciously, I had this idea that I'm not supposed to be flawed. And if
mm,
I'm going to be flawed, I damn well better hide it from other people.
mm,
And so a lot of my efforts, I think that partly has to do with why I was fragmented because I had all these facades up. Like I don't want people to think that, I'm flawed. And then I get defensive and then I act like a jerk and blah, 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 blah. And so coming to really accept my own flaws
mm.
helped me really accept other people's flaws too. And I was taught this one word that changed everything for me, and it is the word flossom. FLAWESOM.
I love that.
Me too, because the idea is being flawed and awesome are not mutually exclusive. They're together. So I am flawed in my awesomeness and I am awesome in my flawedness. And
Mm.
it just like takes the pressure off. So I could go on, so I will stop there so you can
No,
ask another question.
that should have been the name of Entrepreneurship Fails. I'm telling you, that is
Flossom.
exactly what we want to embody in this whole program.
Right.
So
Well,
that's great.
steal that name because I
There
didn't
you
make
go.
it up. Somebody thought it was me. So totally steal that. And I actually want to get a sign for my wall that says Flossom in giant
Blossom.
letters. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
I love that so much, Barb, and it's exciting to hear you say about and talk about the inevitability of failure, right? And so how I kind of wanted to ask you to just like talk a little bit more about it, and how do you kind of think about, okay, this is an inevitable failure, or this is my fault, I should be doing better. I think those lines
Mhm.
are a little blurred sometimes. I mean, sometimes we just got to step up and tighten up and be better,
Right.
and other
True.
times that failure is inevitable. So like, how do we
Yeah.
talk about that
Yeah. Well, the first thing that occurs to me to say about that is that the perfectionistic mindset, like sometimes people who are perfectionists think that's good. But the people that, and there's a lot of people in recovery, honestly, who are perfectionists because it's about control and it's
Mm,
about fear of what other people are going to think about me and that, or what's going to happen to me if I'm not absolutely perfect. And I am not saying there's anything wrong with achieving and having very high standards. I have very high standards and I have high standards for myself. And I can have high standards for other people, but there's a balance between is there suffering going on because I
mm,
have these high expectations for myself that are just unattainable? Or is it a striving component? Is it something that is causing me to stretch myself? And I think I don't know that there's one answer to that question for everybody, but if you're someone who really struggles with perfectionism and if failure feels like you're going to die, you probably need some kind of help. Like it could be from a coach like me, but it also could be that you need like a therapist or something, because if it's debilitating, it's a problem. And I think, most of us know when we're slacking.
Mhm.
So if I am not achieving what I want to achieve because I'm slacking, that's really different from I'm not achieving what I'm achieving because, that was a fail. So here's an example. When I first started my business, I didn't know what I was doing. And I actually want to give a plug for Collab and for Margaret, specifically Margaret Lee, because she said to me, I met with her and I was like, I don't know how to coach. I don't know what to do. And she was like, Barb, you don't get better at something by not doing it. And I was like, oh my God, that is so effing obvious.
Mhm.
But it
And
takes people telling you that obvious thing to
right. But
stick
like,
with
you don't get better at something by not doing it. It's the same thing in recovery. Like, you can't get better at these new behaviors by not doing it. So I kind of was like, okay, I really want to work with small business people because those are my people, but I also want to work with people in recovery because those are my people. And like, the intersection would be ideal. I'm like, oh my God, what if I work with entrepreneurs in recovery?
Mhm.
And so I started a meetup group,
Mm.
and like, two people came,
Mm.
and neither one of them was really an entrepreneur.
Mm.
And I did it for 6 months, and I tried all different ways of promoting it, and it didn't work. So I was like, okay, I'm going to qualify that as a fail because it makes me not feel so bad. And like, the failure mindset, especially as an entrepreneur, really helped me with not to keep grinding on that and saying like, this is going to work. And just a variety of things I tried over time made me realize, like, I can work with entrepreneurs, but most entrepreneurs want like a business coach. And
Mm.
I'm not a business coach. I can, like, to me, mindset is behind everything that you do. And I'm more of someone who works with people's distorted thinking or dysfunctional behavior patterns that they're not happy with, they want to change, and they don't know how. And so I can absolutely work with an entrepreneur, and I can absolutely work with people in recovery. But it turns out that there's plenty of people who are not entrepreneurs and who are not in recovery who I work very well with as a coach. So I've had to kind of shed those ideas and hone in on who my target market is. And I wouldn't actually call those failures, but I know that there are some people who would call them failures if it was their own business. They're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And, these aren't my people, or I don't know who my people are. And, those aren't failures. That's just part of the process
I
of,
love that you said
building a
not
business.
not grinding away and like keeping going on this one thing, but like changing it. I think that's a
Right,
huge thing that
right.
we've seen with entrepreneurs where it's like it's really smart to know when like a fail is like a full stop and you need to start
Yeah,
something else, or if a failure is like you just need to change something. And
right.
that's really cool that you mentioned that.
Right. Yeah, I agree, because I've seen people that will just keep going at the same thing from a bunch of different angles. And it's like, the evidence is clear. Just because you
Mhm.
think it's a good idea doesn't mean your target market thinks it's a good idea, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And like pivoting and maybe stopping one business and starting the other doesn't have to be a failure because you are a totally new person because you had
Right.
an experience before. And it's like,
Right.
love yourself for that and know
Right.
it's just a part of the journey. And my
Right.
friend Sarah, she's the founder of the Honeybee Project, and we like go to each other every time we like
Yeah.
experience failure
Yeah.
in our businesses. And she's like, Marina, if you're not failing, you're not doing it right. You're doing
Right.
something
Yeah.
wrong because that
Right.
it's a part of the journey. And this should
Right.
be like a little celebration because
Right.
you're on this right path. So
Absolutely. I don't know if you know Ramit Sethi. He is a multi-millionaire, multi-times over online entrepreneur. And I first met him he has a program called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And his thing is, I need to do 10 fails per month. He keeps
mm,
like a record of his failure.
Wow.
And he's like uber successful. So obviously, he's got something there. And I do just want to give another plug because you
do it.
said
This is
pivot,
your
like,
time to shine. Yes.
right. Known Co-working has an online virtual program that airs approximately monthly. That's called Pivot Talk. And right now, it's specifically for businesses who are pivoting during quarantine so that
Mhm.
other people can learn from, like, how did they, what did they do? But after the quarantine is over, we will continue it because the pivot is a natural part of the progression of many businesses on their growth journey. And so it's really helpful to hear from other people, both like, what did you do? How did you do it? And what was the thinking behind it? Because I think that thinking gets in the way of so much stuff because we have ideas of how things should be, and often we're wrong, you
Yeah.
know?
Mhm.
Yeah. Outside of mindset, which is kind of hard because mindset is everything,
Mhm. Yeah.
what resources or sources of energy, sources of like love and joy did you grab onto when experiencing a quote unquote failure? And like how did
Yeah.
those impact you?
Yeah. So my business is called Higher Power Coaching and Consulting for a reason, because I'm higher powered. So I was a spiritual person before I came into recovery, but my recovery has really just magnified my spirituality. And I have a very strong connection to my higher power. We
Mm.
talk about making conscious contact with our higher power as part of the recovery process. And for me, it's God, but it doesn't, like, if you're in recovery, you just need to know that there is a power greater than you. It doesn't have to be divine. It doesn't have to be spiritual. It doesn't have to be God. For me, it's God. So I am very tightly connected to God. And one of the things I've learned to do in recovery that I never did before, even as a spiritual person, is I hand things over to God. So the things I hand over the most frequently are fear, and like the obsessive thoughts or negative thinking. And so I've had a lot of negative thinking in my life, despite being quite the optimist. And I thought I dealt with a lot of it. Like, I'm 57 now. So in my early 30s, I thought I cleaned up most of that. But I sort of feel like it went subterranean, like below my
It
subconscious.
hid, yeah.
Yeah. And so recovery showed me I had a lot of stuff going on in there. And one of the things that was revealed to me is that I do have a lot of negative thinking. Um, and I don't have to believe my thoughts. I
Mm.
didn't know that. So I don't have to believe my thoughts about me. I don't have to believe my thoughts about other people. And I don't have to believe my thoughts about the world. So what I do is I go, okay, what are the facts? Like I have the most unbelievably wonderful, loving, romantic relationship with an incredibly kind, wonderful man. And I woke up one night, I was sleeping at his house, and the pillow between my legs was missing. And my first thought was, that effer stole my pillow. Okay. So that was my waking thought. Now, that was ridiculous. First of all, he's sleeping. Secondly, he's never done anything like that. And third, there it was on the floor on my side, right? So I have enough wherewithal now to know that that is not a true thought. But in the past, when I had thoughts like that, I just believed them. I guess I just assumed that because I'm thinking it, it must be true. So I was able to see first for myself, my thoughts aren't true, my thoughts about myself. And then I started realizing, oh, the thoughts I'm having about other people aren't necessarily true either. And the thoughts I'm having about the world aren't necessarily true either. So I would say, in answer to your question, it's a very tight connection to my higher power. It is really understanding my own thoughts. And the third thing is that I'm connected to lots of entrepreneurs. I hang out in like an ecosystems of entrepreneurs. So I run my thoughts by people, or I run my experiences by people. I'm going to give another plug. I'm part of the collaboration of minority women professionals, and I love being
That
in
is
that
run
group.
by our past EIR, Sandy
Yes,
Williams.
Sandy. She is
Yes.
all over the place, and she actually just got a Quinnipiac Chamber award for community impact.
She's
Yeah,
everywhere, and we are
she's
so proud
amazing.
of her.
She's,
We
she's
miss her.
amazing. And
Yeah.
actually, I actually introduced her to Known, so she's the program manager of Knownpreneurs as well.
Yep.
So she's
Yep.
all over the place. Well, anyway, that group every Monday morning has a meeting that's called Manifesting Mondays for people who are members, where we meet for 45 minutes and you set your goals for the week, and you pick a quarterly book that you're going to read, and then they help you keep track and support you, and it's also like a mini networking thing. And I started doing that in October after thinking, like, I need either like a mastermind group, which, by the way, I want to say I absolutely hate that name because of the legacy of the words master, both in terms of patriarchy and slavery. And I want to say that out loud. I don't have a better name.
Barb? Okay.
But I absolutely hate that name, but I'm going to use it because people know what I'm talking about. I'm like, I need a mastermind group or something, accountability group. Meanwhile, I'm seeing like every week, manifesting Mondays, manifesting Mondays, manifesting Mondays on
Like,
Facebook
what
and
is
Instagram
that?
and email. And I'm like, wait, why don't I just join that group? So I joined in October, and I have like an 83% reaching my goal stats, because they're keeping them for me. So like, being around people who are supportive of you. I heard a long time ago, share your go up goals with people who are going to support you, and share your give up goals with everybody. So let's say you want to give up smoking, you tell everybody on the planet so that they can help you stick to it. But if you have a goal, like I want to achieve $100,000 in revenue this year, you only share that with the kind of people who are going to support you, because there's a lot of naysayers out there. So you got to pick and choose who's in your support network.
Yeah.
I love that you're talking about like what to listen to, and you're even including your own voice. Like you're saying, like what voices to listen to, like everyone's voice, this one group of people's voice, my own voice. I think that's really cool. And you bring up a good point about support. And we've talked about this throughout this whole week about like what people go to for support, mentors, family, that kind of thing. And so it's great that you're going into business networks that you have for support for people that are like you and have similar goals and stuff.
Right. Yeah. And that's why like a co-working place like Known Co-working is so fantastic, because people join places like that because they want to be around people who are trying to like do better things, create better things, make the world a better place, make connections to other people. So if you're out there, you know, if you're in your home working on your own, which is what I'm doing. I mean, I've literally been home except for the grocery store and my sweetheart's house for months, but I'm still connecting to other people. So don't think you have to go it alone, because there's all kinds of communities out there.
And something that I'll just name it for myself, the 5 minutes, 10 minutes before meetings, I'm like, oh gosh, because I'm have like Zoom fatigue, or it's just kind of exhausting. But once you get in the groove, like now, like of people who are like-minded and are just like here to hype you up and be your cheerleader, it feels, for me at least, it feels really good. And so just naming the fact that it's okay to feel groggy and to feel Zoom fatigue and to think that networking is just something that's going to be pushed off until COVID's over. Once you find your people, it genuinely works.
Right. Yeah. Agreed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I want to do a screenshot, but I'm on a Mac that isn't really mine, and I don't know how to do that quickly. So can one of you guys do a screenshot?
I'll do one. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to have
tech star over here.
Yeah.
Yay.
I can't believe it's 12:22 already. We only have 8 minutes left.
I know.
This is nuts.
I have a question that I'm actually really excited to hear you answer, Barb, and it's, okay, you're the tiny voice, this is how I end things, the tiny voice on an entrepreneur's shoulder who's just like sad, depressed, frustrated with themselves. They feel the weight of all of these accumulated failures, and they don't know where to turn. What are you telling them, right? What are you trying to get them to do in terms of behavior change, mindset change, you know, whatever? Take this question away however you want, but you are that voice.
So you know what's really funny is you're giving me an opportunity to plug a program that I just created this week, which is, and I actually, because like I just created it and I just named it, so I have to look it up to see what what I called it.
Finally came up
I can't remember. And let's see. Oh, it's consistent joy, pleasure, and playfulness for serious adults. And it's because there are so many people out there that are so focused on accomplishment and doing things that they forget to play and have fun in our lives. And, you know, I mentioned before, I'm a spiritual person and God is my higher power. And one of the things that is said about God in many cultures is we were created in God's image and likeness. And what I take that to mean is we are creators, just as God is a creator. Being an entrepreneur is a creative activity. And so the way to be creative is to be creative. And so find other ways, whether it's play or arts or crafts or music or performance of some other kind, but step out of what you're in and do something different. Shift your perspective. A saying we have in recovery is move a muscle, change a thought. Go for a walk, go sit on, you know, we live in New Haven, go to the harbor and look at the water and look at the birds. Do something to just change up the scenario. And the other thing is reach out to someone else and tell them that you're struggling. Because that is going to create a much more intimate relationship than if you try to project this image, which is what I did my whole life, project this image of like, I got it together, I got it together, I got it together. Meanwhile, I go home on Friday nights and, you know, smoke weed and watch Netflix and drink booze and binge on food. I don't do that now, but I used to do that kind of thing all the time because I didn't know how to cope with life. And so now I connect with other human beings and I say, you know, this is really hard for me, or I'm really struggling with this. So there's, I would say, whatever you're doing, stop doing what you're doing and do something else. You know, that's the way to shift up.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about, this vulnerability and this emotional intelligence that it takes to tell someone is not taught in schools. Like we're not really socialized to expect that type of dynamic with people. And so it's okay, whoever's listening, if you're hearing this, being like, oh, that's not me, I don't know how to do that. No one's taught you, right? No, you don't have those types of lessons. So again, right, if you only, what Margaret said, you can only work on something and be better if you try it. I butchered that, but you know, it's okay to feel like this is an intimidating ask or recommendation, but everything possible.
Well, it's hard, you know. I'll tell you, when I started recovery, I did the steps with 3 other women, and we realized, like, one of us said, oh, I was going to call you guys and tell you I was struggling, but I talked myself out of it. And then we realized all of us did it, and then we made a pact that we would reach out to each other, and then none of us did it. So this is us talking about it, making a pact, and then not doing it. So it is hard. It is hard, but you can do hard because you've been doing hard your entire life. So when people go, oh, it's so hard. Yeah. And
look at what else you've done, you know, like you can do hard. Yeah.
Yes, you can do hard.
I love that. I love that. Barb, did I not ask you anything, or did you want to touch on anything about your experience with failure that we haven't yet talked about?
I don't think so. I think I've pretty much covered it. I did send myself an email.
Are we sure we've gone over every failure in your life ever and cataloged every?
Oh, hell no. Well, you know what? Here's what I will say. I would say the greatest lesson of 12-step recovery, of the hundreds that I got, was understanding my part in things, what I was doing to create chaos or exacerbate chaos that was going on around me. I absolutely had no idea the impact of my behavior on other people. And so really understanding it's not necessarily everybody else. Just quick example, this morning, my sweetheart was here and he was asking me about his earbuds at his house. And I'm talking about his house. I'm like, they're next to my side of the bed on the third. He thought I was talking about here. And so we came up to my bedroom and went into the drawer and he was like, is this what you're talking about? I go, those are mine. And we both acknowledged, like, it was just a very simple miscommunication, because I'm talking about his house, he's talking about my house, but we didn't know that. Well, in the past, I would have blamed him. It would have been his fault. I would have had nothing to do with it. And it would have turned into some kind of blah, blah, blah. But we were both like, oops, you know, this is what happened, you know? And that's the other thing about, like, when you accept that you're flawed and that you make mistakes, you're not completely like riddled with shame and embarrassment and humiliation. You're like, oops.
You're like saying it's okay to fail, which is really the crux of what we're talking about.
Absolutely. It's just part of life. But if you're constantly failing, are you setting yourself up for failure? Are you self-sabotaging? Like, that's that's actually, people who do that are part of my ideal client market. If you're constantly self-sabotaging, there's something going on there, and you probably need help if you keep doing that. You know? And you might need an outside perspective to help you understand, am I self-sabotaging, or are these like true fails?
And it's kind of nice to get that outside perspective of someone who you don't know intimately, right? Like, that's why people go to therapy. That's why Barb is a resource for anyone who's listening. And you're not, you know, telling your partner or your friends and family about this because you might be nervous about judgment.
Right.
The extra person. I want to just kind of end on the fact that if anyone's listening to this and is just as awestruck by I am with Barb, like, reach out to me, reach out to Barb directly. Like, she's in New Haven. She's in our network. Like, I would consider her a friend. And so I just want to really put words to the fact that we're accessible and are willing and ready to work with people who are interested in what we've been talking about today and this whole entire week.
Because contact the library too if you want to get in touch with either of these beautiful women. Thank you for coming to this series this week. If you came today, you can find the videos of these on our YouTube channel. Coming up, we'll have every single one that's been going on this week up there. And it's in our Facebook catalog, the Facebook video catalog too. So you can watch this on your own time if you missed it. Thanks again, Barb. Thanks, Marina.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much. Great to meet you, Colleen. And I'll catch you later, Marina.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Have a good weekend.